following TLOY episode is a throwback interview that I did in the past. This will now be formatted as a podcast episode. Growing up in Atlanta, were there ever any inspirations from there that made you want to pursue more music?
So, beginning stages, I've been rapping since I was in the fourth grade, and so the first song that I actually freestyle to or did a song to was Young Jeezy's Standing Ovation. And so I was in the fourth grade, and me and my friend, we entered the talent show, and we made our raps off of that song. So I always credit that song to kind of the genesis of who I am as an artist. Fast forward, once I get into middle school, that's when Soulja Boy started becoming the thing. And so, just seeing how he was able to tap into the music wave off the internet, that inspired me. I was young, so I was hip to all his music at that time. Super heavy. So I made a diss song from my teacher off of Birdwalk beat, and that was the first song that kind of went viral, to me. All the kids in the school knew the song and talked about it, and so it was the worst whooping of my life that I got because I got in trouble. But at the end of the day, he still kind of spearheaded my love to make music and share it. And so as far as the two songs or acts that really inspired that, you had Young G's and Soulja Boy. But there's a lot of acts that indirectly or directly inspired me, like Andre 3000. Of course, he's the staple head of Atlanta music. And Outkast. You still have people like Gucci who kind of intertwine that street music with the production and just the quality, or I mean the quantity that he was pushing out music at that time. And then local acts that we have here, like Jock Beats or Michael Aristotle, they were very pivotal people inside my process of being an artist myself.
True. I know what you mean, man. And I think with Atlanta too, the scene, it is very popular too nowadays. It's the mecca of music, especially black music and hip hop and R&B and everything else. Almost everyone who's charting right now is from Atlanta. And even to speak about the music scene in Atlanta for a bit, what makes the city such a place of unity and black excellence when it comes to music and other parts of the culture, because right now Atlanta is winning right now, and you see Atlanta artists working with Atlanta artists with no problems, so
yeah. I think that really comes first and foremost off of the producers. So we wouldn't be the artists that we are if we didn't have just the ample amount of producers inside our city that really kind of shape the music scene when it comes to just the sound of music that's going on in hip hop, R&B, like you said, from the 808 drums. Of course, we were the pioneers of trap music or whatever, or we popularized trap music with T.I. and Gucci. I wouldn't say we were the actual first ones to do it. That probably came from Memphis and 3 6 and people of that nature. But as far as coining the term trap music, we started that. So with that, that kind of spilled into everybody just trying to create that sound and tie into that sound. So from us making trap music, it made us kind of hone in on that sound because only we knew the elements that really made the sound hit. In Atlanta, it's a huge car culture as well. So a lot of times artists or producers make songs for their cars or whatever, because we have the tricked out cars, or at least back in the 2000s, that's what was really big. And so that kind of further played into the sonic aspect of how people created their music strictly for their cars. And then once that came in, we had melody of all of that nature. So as far as the sound goes, that's what started that. But for the music scene and the artists, it really just, I don't know how it kind of happened, but Atlanta is, though it's seen as this big city, is really super small. And so everybody knows somebody, who is either famous or makes music in a sense. And so because we were able to pioneer that music as far as Gucci and Jeezy and Thug and Migos and all these people, then we started booming in that industry where it was inspirational for like kids like me and other kids growing up to like strive to do music. And so that's where you get this influx of people who are artists. And so though in our minds it seems super saturated because literally everybody is a rapper and everybody like makes music, it's still crazy because nobody really sounds the same in the real underground scene. Like the popular scene, as far as the Young Thugs and the Migos and the Little Babies, like they might kind of have like similar like sounds and stuff like that, the Gunnas or whatever, but they even still have their little uniqueness about them that makes them them. Um, but as far as the new wave that's about to come up my scene, there's so many artists. You got like Kenny Mason, you got Deontay Hitchcock, you got the letter M, you got David the Tragic, you have Jock Beach, you have Michael Aristotle, Beauregard. So it's just so many different artists that look and sound completely different from each other, and so that's what makes it easy for us to coexist because nobody's really running the same lane all the way.
True, true. I know what you mean, man. And I think like with Childish Gambino too. I feel like he
Right.
is like a very big aspect in the whole change of the Atlanta sound because
That,
coming from a person who's from like Stony Creek, well, from Stony Mountain, not Stony Creek, because we have yeah, like you notice that he's like the differential norm between what's Atlanta and what's like different. So
right.
I feel like he did impact like a lot of people like in that sense too, and like that's just kind of like my opinion too. So I think like he
Yeah.
did kind of change the sound in a way as well, you know.
Definitely, and because like Childish Gambino is from the same area as like Gucci and like Future and all of these people. Like we call it the East Side of Atlanta, and so he literally went to school or was in the same area. So it just shows the dynamicness of Atlanta, where you can have artists like Gucci and Future, but then still have a Childish Gambino who are on two different spectrums of music, but they still have the same experiences. And so like you said, like he was very pivotal to show that you don't just have to have one sound of music because again, I think that there's like a negative connotation that all artists in Atlanta sound like Future or Migos or Thug or whatever, and that's not the case. Like we have a lot of lyricists, we have a lot of artistic artists as well, and they're gonna get their shine, in the same light in due time. But it's just about how that pendulum swing. It goes from conscious to like street to like weird to whatever every single like year and 5 years really.
True, true. And I mean, just going back to your life and your process in becoming a musician, like did you had like a musical history and a background in which it inspired you to become a rapper and musician? Like, was there like an inspiration beyond your choice on what you want to become?
It really just came down to just exposure from like my own personal family. Like I don't have any musicians in my family, but as far as like my parents, they would play different things growing up that really stuck with me. My mom was very like melody based, so like she played a lot of R&B and neo soul. So I would hear like Lauryn Hill, Jill Scott. I would hear Floetry and all of these different like artists. While she's still kind of tied in like hip hop and stuff, but she was really big on like the more melodic artists. My dad is a super like rap like head, so he liked people like Tupac, he liked Jay-Z, and those artists. So I would hear that when I was with him as well. So it was just a nice blend that I was hearing like coming up with like different artists and different like musicians that inspired the people around me family wise.
True, true. And like when I was listening to your Just Pray For Me album, like I could tell like the whole process. It's just like an introduction into like how you are now. Like that was like kind of like the only project I've listened to, but like I am gonna get into the other projects like later on. So, but like just to speak on your album, Just Pray For Me. Tell me about the creative process in that project and what inspired you to make it.
Okay, so this like path that I've been taking visibly, to like the public in Atlanta has been like 4 years, right? And so 4 or 5 years, I would say. And so beginning off in those stages, my first album is called Real Men Wear Pink, and so the Real Men Wear Pink album was more so of just like all the bops and all of the different like songs that I felt like people would like. So I have the song for the guy, song for the girl, song for to make you dance, song to make you party and stuff like that because I was trying to reach a demographic with that actual album. It came out in 2017, but in the back of my mind while I was actually creating that album, I always had the concept of Just Pray For Me because Just Pray For Me, like the nuclei of the album kind of started with the No More Parties in Atlanta track that I have. The No More Parties in Atlanta track is based on a true story. It actually happened as far as like one of my friends' little brothers got shot at a party, and that happened the exact same time when I was working on the last album that I had, and so that stuck with me, and it was something that I always wanted to kind of speak on. Also, going just further deeper with my own vulnerability, but I just didn't think that it was time to actually drop that album because I didn't feel like I had the fan base to support the topics and just the content that I had. Up until that point, I didn't really have like a super strong following. So I used that first like album, Real Men Wear Pink, to build up my following. I put out an EP called Sunroof Season that had more so of those like warm summer vibes to like kind of build up my audience. So when I felt like my audience was complete enough, I could drop something that had like more substance. I could just pray for you. And like you said, I think that it was like more so of an introduction to the lane that I wanted to go as an artist as far as spilling out vulnerability while also being able to couple it with like radio friendly songs and just like songs that people could relate to on a day to day basis.
True, true. And even like one of my favorite tracks on the album, which is like No More Parties in Atlanta, like I do kind of notice that there was like a Kanye like influence, like with the streetlight sample, as
Right,
well as the whole concept of the Atlanta culture, like the ode to Atlanta, like the scene at a party where your friend was at, and the skit where like the shooting happened. And I would just wanted to like let you know if the song kind of had like that same ode to like Atlanta as well as like
right.
the inspiration to Kanye.
Yeah, definitely. Like definitely. When we were making that song, I didn't necessarily have like a song that I wanted to make. I was just like I went to my producer. Me and my producer known each other since the sixth grade, so we're really tight. He's worked on every one of my projects. He's produced and engineered all of my music, so we know each other and we've been through the same experiences. So I was just telling him while we was creating that song, like I really want a song that just embodied Atlanta as far as the like the bounciness of it. This is the song that I would hear if I went to Atlanta movie pretty much. And so we made it super quick, like literally made it like in like 15, 20 minutes or whatever, kind of like freestyle the hook or whatever, and it just came how it came. But definitely as far as Kanye goes, like Kanye has been always a huge inspiration to me personally as an artist because I like his ability to never conform or settle in just like one lane. Like once you think that you can box him into one thing, then he switches his whole sound and he's able to really reinvent himself every single album. And so he's always been one of my top like artists that I draw inspiration from. 808s and Heartbreaks was an album that really impacted me growing up. And so I felt like Just Pray For Me kind of embodied some elements of an 808 and Heartbreak because it was more vulnerable and it was more open. So I wanted to kind of pay homage, like you said, by embodying like certain like elements that kind of gave me like inspiration growing up and also while making the album. So definitely Streetlights is my favorite song on 808 and Heartbreaks. And so I kind of always had that melody in my head and I just was trying to find the right way to deliver it. And so I was glad I was able to kind of do it on this project.
True. And knowing that you're like a big Kanye fan, like you notice like the good and the bad, like from the college dropout to Jesus is King. You do tend to see like a change in Kanye's like background and personality and style and sound and music, and like where he went from a man like wearing polos and like backpacks to single-handedly like reading the Bible every day and like creating a gospel album and having like Sunday service. So, in one of
Right.
the questions to speak about Kanye for a bit, how would you define his status in the impact of Black culture and in the culture of music as of today?
Man, I love it personally. Like, I think that a lot of people didn't really like Jesus King, but I loved it because of the fact that it wasn't for us. It was for him. It was kind of like him, his testimony, and him like expressing to a point where he could pretty much like get that out and pretty much testify that like he found Jesus. And so me personally, like I'm a PK, so like I'm a pastor kid or whatever, and so my dad was a youth pastor, so I always had like fundamental like knowledge of the word, but it took me personally like finding like God and Jesus myself to really embody that. That's why you get things like "Thank you, Jesus, I'm not worthy," because while I was going through the path of life, like I was broken down so much where all I had to turn to was Jesus, and so I have a personal connection, especially with Jesus is King, because it kind of came out around the same time that Just Pray for Me came out, and so like I felt it 10 times more because I also got baptized around the same time too. So like I have a spiritual tie to that album specifically. But again, like I love his journey as an artist and just coming from college dropout where he's trying to prove himself and like try and fight to get respect from Jay-Z and all these other people, all the way to my favorite album from Kanye, Graduation, where he's at the top of the world and you can't tell him anything and the ego is starting to come in. Then you have like going towards like 808s and Heartbreaks, his vulnerability, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, where he's like embodying just art, and then going from Jesus, where he's just like punk rock. Like I just love the fact that he's able to always connect with his audience in a different way and just show that he's a person on his own journey. And his journey is not going to always look the same, and your journey should never look the same as an artist or as an individual, regardless, you should always be growing. And I think that he's growing more and more as an artist and as a person.
True. And just to like think about it in a certain sense, I feel like going back to like everything that's happened right now to our discussion with COVID-19, and since like the year has changed by on like what we could do now, like do you feel like the pandemic has affected like the way you tend to proceed like with your music and business? And if so, did you notice like any changes or tweaks that you had to handle like to handle your business in a pandemic like that?
Well, to be honest, it came at the best time for me personally because I already put out the album. I already like had the concert for it inside of my city at least. The down part of it was I wasn't able to tour the album the way that I planned on doing it and do the visuals that I planned on doing it. Just because of the social distancing aspect of it. But I do think it was a blessing in disguise, at least for me, because it was able to show me, or it was able for me to like take a step back and be able to work on how to be creative enough to work through COVID, or be creative enough to find different avenues to connect with my audience that didn't just necessarily have to do with music. I think that a lot of people haven't discovered that yet, or discovered that avenue for themselves because you see a lot of people just trying to drop music to stay relevant, but we're all in the same setting as far as our rooms or in just our settings. We're not able to like move the way that we used to. So music isn't sticking as it used to 10 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago. So I think that COVID is kind of showing that you have to be more visual. Like you have to be more interesting, and it's more than just the music right now. Like as artists, we should be able to make music at a drop of a dime. So that shouldn't be the hard part. But the hard part is finding different avenues and ways to connect to your audience so it doesn't get played out. And you're always trying to reinvent and be creative. And so I think that COVID is kind of creating creativity a little bit more. You see things like quarantine radio with Tory Lanez and how he was able to embody that. We have verses now where artists are going head to head and just showcasing their music. And so they're using live. We start doing live concerts on IGTV or whatever. So now I think it's just time to find different ways to showcase ourselves, and not just music.
True. I know what you mean, man. And I feel like nowadays too, like there's other rappers and other people in the industry that are doing like different ways now. Like some people like with it's actually funny because like there's like rappers like Casanova and other rappers doing OnlyFans accounts and like other people doing like freestyles like with Guap Dad 4000 with Rona raps to people doing like interviews like in their own homes. So it's kind of
Right.
interesting as well. So in terms of other musicians and rappers in the industry, do you feel like the pandemic has affected the way like these artists like handle their business as well, like in terms of show money and like other stuff as well?
Yeah, definitely. And it's something that I'm curious to see play out because we see these artists that literally live off of the road, and they splurge their money in a way where they're always preparing for the next check because it's gonna come off of tour money or show money. And so I'm very curious to see how like an NBA YoungBoy or the Baby or all of these younger artists specifically pivot, because of the fact that they can't use the money that they usually get from like festivals and tours um, to finance their lifestyle. And so I do think that it has made a change or shifted that aspect. You don't see them as loud about their music as they used to be, or about their money at least. I'm sorry.
No, I know what you mean. I know that we only have like two questions left, and I feel like this is something that is an influence to everybody. But like, what artists or genres were you mainly like influenced by, and in the future, would you ever collaborate with certain artists and experiment with like certain genres, like by any chance?
Yeah, definitely. So, on a hip hop level, J. Cole's my favorite rapper. I literally was just talking about this before I got on this interview, but J. Cole really has shaped the way that I view music, the way that I view life, and just my actual like morals as an individual. I discovered him when like he dropped the warm up, so I was like in middle school, and I kind of grew up with J. Cole. He was kind of like a distant cousin to me, in the type of way. So all of my storytelling aspects, from my most popular songs like "Salsa with Your Mama" that you will find later, or to like a "No More Parties," or even just the flow of "Just Pray for Me," is directly influenced by J. Cole's storytelling ability. And so, of course, him. I love Andre 3000. Andre is one of my spirit animals when it comes to just being bold and being artistic. He never allows himself to be boxed in either. Kanye, of course, like we talked about, and just his impact on my life. And then as far as other artists, like I love Aaliyah. I'm a huge Aaliyah fan, and so her melody and just how Timberland, Genuine, and Missy Elliott were able to kind of like scope her sound. It really just showed me, elements that I would want to embody in my own personal music. I'm a huge Beyonce fan. I love her work ethic. I love how like she's able to be melodic and powerful in the same breath. Her showmanship, um, old wise, I love like Earth, Wind and Fire, Stevie Wonder is some of my favorite artists of all times. I'm a huge Nirvana fan as far as Kurt Cobain and just like his punkness and how he skated on things like Smell Like Teen Spirit. Um, and then even gospel influence like Kurt Franklin and how his like penmanship, where he's able to move you spiritually just off of words. Like I studied that heavy, and so I kind of find influence all around. Like I love to just find new artists or just re-listen to artists that I grew up on and be influenced by them.
True, true. And I know that like we'd have to end this interview soon, so I know like with COVID, like it has impacted your plans right now, but do you have like any other plans for the year in terms of new music coming by or other creative projects and so forth? And are there like any final words that you would like to say for any creative or any person pursuing their dreams?
Yeah, so definitely this year I wanted to kind of I took a step back just to like reevaluate things and myself. I did a lot of self reflecting, and so now I don't want to do music the same way. Like I don't want to just drop a single and be like, hey, listen to this single on all DSPs or in the same type of facet. So I'm trying to get more visual. That was another goal of mine for the year, just to drop more music videos or just visuals. Period. Um, so I'm gonna continue to do that. And with these new like unreleased songs that I have, I'm gonna just create visuals around them where my Instagram is gonna indirectly become just a journal where you'll hear like unreleased music and then see visuals. So that's why I'm pivoting on, at least for this year. I'm working on the follow up album too. Just pray for me. It's gonna be entitled Ellenwood, and so it's kind of a homage to my hometown or whatever. And so working on that to be prepared for next year. And as far as advice for just creatives and artists is always trust your gut, always trust your intentions, and be okay with failing. I'm somebody who I value independence. I think that we as artists um, have the ability to write our own story, and we don't need these machines and these different people to pretty much tell us or direct us where to go. I think that nobody can create your story like you can. So be able to write that story and write goals that you set out to achieve. And if you fail, learn from them. And that's what life is about. You're supposed to always learn from mistakes and continue moving forward and stuff. But never stop trying, never stop creating, and never stop trusting your own vision, because you're the only one that can know your vision. Everybody else can't see what you see. And so I know that's mad cliche as far as when it comes to just like artists like speaking, but it's the truth. And I believe that when people really trust God, God will expose you to your purpose and your path, and He'll order your steps. And so continue to seek God, and the rest will follow.